Gemmer City Council is now in session. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Here.
Councilmember Kugler,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Baker,
Present.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Here.
Mayor Herbig,
Here.
all present.
Would you all please stand and join me in the flag salute? Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved as published. Being no objections, the agenda is approved. Next, we have a presentation, introductions of new staff, introduced by Public Works Operations Director Jennifer Gordon. We have Seth Thompson, Public Works Maintenance Worker, and Case Rogers, Public Works Maintenance Worker.
Mayor Herbig, Ms. Gordon is making her way downstairs as we speak. Do you mind if we address the consent agenda first?
Sure. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
you typically have public comment before consent.
Correct. Well, why don't we, Ms. Gordon, are you ready for your? Yeah, that's no problem. Mr. City Manager, where's the fun?
We're going to go to Skate Like a Girl summer camp program. So we, for many years now, we've offered and allowed Skate Like a Girl nonprofit organization to come and offer skating classes to our youth in the summertime. They're week-long classes. And this was just recently taken, just like last week, I believe. But this is a really empowering program, and they offer scholarships for low-income youth, and they emphasize empowerment and equity, and that looks like a lot of fun right there. So there you go.
I can actually say my daughter did that a few years ago, and it was quite a lot of fun. So
Nice. Yeah.
all right, next on the agenda is public comment. We welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. We'll hear from our on-site guests first, followed by our virtual guests. If you're online, please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. All guests must address comments to the mayor and city council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We want to split your time with others or reset your time, except by express approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters and council members must limit their communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have eight guests wishing to speak. We'll take the first four in this order. Kathleen Cooper, followed by David Dorian, Karen Olson, and John Culver. Kathleen Cooper, please approach the podium.
Right there. Yeah.
Well, as I looked at the city council activities, and I kind of see some contradictions that I don't quite understand, and I'm sure that with your agenda, they will probably be straightened out. One of the contradictions I saw is that there is money for support of Seattle Pride Parade, but then there isn't enough money for the winter tree lighting. That even though it was planted there for that purpose, and for some reason it has not been active within the last couple of years, and I would kind of like to know why that has happened and how we can get it going again. And another contradiction that I have found is that there is money for painting of a flag on the stairs raiser when they have a flag that states liberty and justice for all already out there. And the big question becomes, what will you do for the other DIA, or is this just for one group, or this type of things? If they're going to be a painting steps for them and then another group comes in and wants to participate, then what can they ask for and what can be done for them? This might have been taken care of, but at this time I don't have any understanding of it. There are plans for housing the homeless, such as the veterans and elderly, and I'm sure that that would also include the homeless that are addicted. And that should happen if they don't have homes. But my concern is with supplying housing for them, also rehabilitation needs to be in that program too, as, and it may be, but as now I haven't heard about that. Because if there isn't rehabilitation there, we just reinforce that addiction because now they have a home to do it in. And I wouldn't want what happened in Seattle to happen here in Kenmore. It hasn't worked for them, and I don't think it would in Kenmore. And then I'm looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, accessibility. And I'm not quite sure what all that means. Is that the same as with liberty and justice for all accessibility, which we just saluted the flag for? For diversity, what exactly is it, a diverse group? Would the seniors be one? Would the parents of handicapped children be one? Would
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Your time is up. And would you
Oh,
state,
it's really?
yes, it's 3 minutes. Would you state your city of residence for the record?
Yes, my city reference is right over the border of Kenmore. But this is where I do all my shopping, and this is where my church affiliation is, my church community. And so it would be Lake Forest Park.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. David Dorian, followed by Karen Olson and John Culver.
Mayor and City Council members, I want to commend Council's leadership on DEIA and commend all those involved in the DEIA strategy and plan. It's very comprehensive, and it shows that Council has bravely committed to the same journey as many local residents have, the journey of understanding how discrimination and disparities exist all around us and how we can collaborate to address them through the process of equity, because equity is a process to achieve the outcome of equality. We need to engage in the process individually and collectively because we are not yet equal. The idea that all men are created equal was always a visionary statement, not a statement of what the status quo was, and it remains that today, as there remain underserved communities even here in Kenmore. For example, a common example of equality versus equity is that of a community meeting such as this being held only in English. That is equal, but it leaves some in the community underserved, not by intent, but by action. So if I would have one piece of feedback on the DEIA plan, it would be about the tense of some of the definitions. They should be in the present tense. Underserved communities were not just underserved when they were enslaved, as we heard in a comment last week, or when their land was taken from them, or when the law of the state formally restricted their recognition as equal. They remain underserved due to structural issues that remain in place. Sadly, we've seen a lack of understanding about equity negatively impact those in our community who have faced and still face discrimination for a number of reasons, including their sexual orientation and gender identity. Art can be a process of driving toward equity and equality. I enjoyed reading about how the city of Sammamish installed a permanent Progress Pride flag on their city hall last year, right above the place where the community can find business cards for city employees. What a great way of saying you will not be denied service here. Indeed, no one should. But the process of equity is required for this community because they have been denied government services in this state in the recent past. And now some seek to deny them services again. When earlier this year, a planning commissioner in Sammamish expressed his desire to deny the community those rights, the city was clear. It honored his right to free speech, as we're honoring that here tonight, but it also stated that that speech was not aligned with the values of the city or the majority of the community. I hope the City Council will continue to take a similar line in responding to comments that deny the need for a process of equity by seeking to claim inequality has been consigned to the past. When it has not been consigned to the past, it is still very much alive today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorian. Karen Olson and John Culver.
Well, I have a different opinion. Well, first, our family is beautifully diverse. Korean, Japanese, European, Colombian, with Hispanic, Indigenous, and African ancestry. My husband and I have welcomed people from around the world to stay in our home. I'm concerned about aspects of Kenmore's DEIA policy. Does it allow diversity of opinion, including deeply held religious beliefs in conflict with the ideologies the council wants us to celebrate and is using our tax dollars to promote? My foremost identity is Christian. Christianity teaches us to love one another as Christ loves us, including the radical idea of loving our enemies. I believe in the inerrancy of the Old and New Testaments. I believe that God created all people, male and female, in his image. I believe in the sanctity of human life and marriage solely between a man and a woman as a biblical symbol of Christ loving, dying, and rising from the dead for the church. I believe that the beautiful rainbow in the sky is a symbol of God's promise to never again destroy the earth by a flood. Am I welcome in Kenmore? Are Bible-believing Christians who can't celebrate LGBTQ+ welcome in Kenmore? Christians throughout history have been marginalized and persecuted, and we are persecuted today. And in no way do we want others persecuted. We are labeled haters because our faith conflicts with the world's faith. Hate is not a part of biblical Christianity. Council members, the best thing you can do to make Kenmore a welcoming city is to stay neutral and not divide citizens into groups supporting one over another. Non-discrimination laws already exist. Police already deal with crime and violence. I would hope that the city would stick to the core functions of civil government, like traffic, public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Would you state your city of residence for the record?
Sure, it's Kenmore.
Thank you. John Culver, followed by John Hendrickson, Lori Sperry, and Vaughn Sperry.
Good evening, Council. John Culver, Kenmore. This council agenda is a pretty solid one. Shelters for our house's neighbors, equity framework tool, benefits and burden analysis, land acknowledgement. I'm glad Arts at Kenmore is finally getting what they need. What did we deserve to deserve this? What did we do to deserve this good fortune? I'm going to remind everyone to vote, but otherwise, this meeting's doing everything it needs to be doing. So I'm going to yield the floor and let the good work continue. Thank you all.
John Hendrickson and Lori Sperry.
John Hendrickson, Kenmore, Washington. I want to talk about how expensive affordable housing is we have an opportunity with the Plymouth Housing Project to actually analyze that. I went to the coffee with the council a couple of weeks ago and I asked Nigel, with the 9% federal tax credit, how much will Plymouth receive in federal tax money to subsidize this project? He doesn't know. And so I asked him, well, what if it just, for an example, it was $1 million qualified basis for the credit, 9% credit, how much would we get? He doesn't know. And he works for the King County Regional Coalition for Homelessness, I think, or something like that. And Melanie O'Kane didn't know. And Kugler was there, she didn't know. And you guys approved this project 14 months ago, been working on it for 2 years. So I had to tell him from what I've seen, because I've asked the staff for this information, they don't have it either. But we're offering up 5 million of our dollars, 3 million of our 13 cities that make up Arch, 5 million from Department of Commerce, 13 million. If the qualified basis is a 27.5 million cost for this building construction in your proposal, the tax credit is 25 million, 9% a year for 10 years. Now that used to be go down to 7%, but I think from the 2015 PATH Act, they get the full 9% every year for 10 years. So that's 38 million. Take out the discount because it's over 10 years. It's 31 million the first year. The project costs 27 million, more than what it costs to build. You spread it out 10 years with the discount coming in, property tax exemption, 3.5 million over 10 years. It's 41 million taxpayer money to subsidize this project. If the tax credit goes for the 37.5 project base, then it's a total of 50 million tax dollars. Doesn't include personal property tax exemption, rent vouchers, Section 8, HUD, Veteran Affairs, Washington Department of Commerce, Operation and Maintenance, Medicare, Medicaid. And they told you in your hearings that they don't have enough money to provide the services. We're still going to be coming back to the city, the county, and the state. They talk about wraparound services, but all they ever say is they'll connect you to the local community services. Well, I can connect you to the dentist and the doctor down the street, but it doesn't sound like they're going to pay for it. So a lot of hubris, ignorance, and arrogance, I think, in this project.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrickson. Lori Sperry, Vaughn Sperry, and Tracy Benazinski.
Good evening. I'm Lori Sperry, as she just said. I live in Kenmore, have lived here for 33 years. I'm also a former council member, served on the city council for 12 years. Thank you for serving, and I bet you're glad for the August break. So tonight I'm going to share the story of Kobe. He's a member of a marginalized group that you may not be aware of yet. Here's Kobe's story. Kobe said he had always felt effeminate, but didn't want to be gay. So at age 11, the young man informed his shocked parents that he was transgender. Nothing happened for a couple years, but then when he was 13, Kobe said older trans people he met online secretly taught him how to, quote, play the suicide card on his parents. Faced with his threats of self-harm, Kobe's parents reluctantly agreed that he could start taking puberty blockers at 13. By his 16th birthday, Kobe was taking estrogen. Later, he had his testicles removed, which stopped his body from producing testosterone. Quote, I was expecting it to help me with my mental health, but it didn't do anything. It just wasted so much time, and all I really did was become a medical patient for life, Kobe explained. Now, the young man said he must be regularly tested for osteoporosis. He has chronic spinal pain. His growth is permanently stunted. He's infertile and has permanently difficulty urinating. The young man said that the quote affirming treatments never actually improved his mental health, just the opposite. They made him worse, psychotic and depressed to the point of actual suicide. The trans ideology completely overtook his life to the exclusion of anything else
that might have been good or worthwhile. Kobe said that during the time I lived as a trans, I had no hobbies or instant interests. I had nothing really. It was just becoming this caricature of a woman and everything that's based around that. Now, obviously, Kobe's story is his own story, but it's not a unique one. There's more and more of these children coming out and giving their stories. There's a whole website about the detransitioner community, detransitioners.org, and they held their first Detransitioner Awareness Day on March 13th, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Sperry. Vaughn Sperry and Tracy Benzinski.
Van Sperry from Kenmore, Washington. I have a very simple question. It's just factual. I know the five-year DEIA plan. There are some expenses involved. My question, I'll direct it to Mayor Herberg here, is what outside funding is going to be made available? And if the city decides that we'll do this, but we don't want to do that underneath the DEIA, or we don't even want to do any of it, is there funding that is going to be cut off? Is the city receiving funding from outside sources, including federal and state? And I'll yield the rest of my time to Mayor Herberg to address the question.
Tracy Benzinski.
Tracy Bonashinsky, Kenmore. On June 6, 2023, for the first time ever, the nation's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights organization, the Human Rights Campaign, declared a state of emergency for the LGBTQ people in the United States, issued a warning, and released a guidebook to ensure safety for LGBTQ+ residents and travelers. The guidebook includes health and safety resources, a state-by-state summary of discriminatory laws, know your rights information, and resources designed to support LGBTQ+ travelers, as well as those already living in hostile states. The threats facing millions of LGBTQ+ people are not just perceived. They are real, tangible, and dangerous. The Department of Homeland Security briefing released in May 2023 reported that domestic violence extremists and people who commit hate crimes have increased threats of violence against LGBTQ+ community members within the last year. These threats include actions linked to drag-themed events, gender-affirming care, and LGBTQ+ curricula in schools. These threats are being made against people simply trying to live their lives and doing nothing other than being themselves. I had the pleasure of working with two self-identified trans teens today. They pulled tansy, dug out blackberry, and hauled mulch just like everyone else. The things they shared about what they enjoyed, what they are looking forward to this week, and what they learned had much in common with the things shared by everyone else. They were human, just like everyone else. I find it horrifying that these kids are growing up in a state of emergency, and I can't look away from the fact that the emergency is playing out right here in Kenmore over the Rainbow Steps Pride Art installation planned for City Hall. The Human Rights Campaign says that LGBTQ+ supporters need to be more than just allies right now. Honestly, I don't really know what that means or how to do it, but my best guess has led me here to council chambers for the past 3 weeks, hoping that my presence and words can push out space for acceptance and love. I hope I can remind us that we belong to one another, that our connectedness and mutual reliance is a strength. These are the very things the Rainbow Steps Pride Art installation wants to remind us of too. So thank you, in the face of community pushback, for your continued support for the Rainbow Steps and for your continued strong leadership for all in our community. I appreciate you all so very much.
Mayor Herberg, I have no additional on-site comments. We'll move on to virtual comments now. If you're wishing to speak, please raise your hand now. Last call for anyone online who'd like to speak during public comment. Mayor Herbig, I see no hands raised.
All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Councilmember File.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. Next, we have a public hearing on proposed ordinance number 23-0580 to amend the Kenmore Municipal Code, section 18.100.200 to require the city of Kenmore to provide public notification in lieu of the sponsoring organization for indoor or outdoor temporary homeless shelters, presented by Development Services Director Samantha Loyuk. Ms. Loyuk.
Good evening, council. This evening before you is ordinance number 23-580. This is essentially a cleanup item that was requested in order to promote transparency and public engagement. The changes in the code are relatively minor and essentially require the city to send out a notice in lieu of the applicant, which is called the sponsoring organization. In the past, we've had the sponsoring organization send it at two different points. There's still one point that they send their own notice to neighbors, but that's before they make an application. Once they make an application, the ordinance would require the city to send out the notice. And the financial burden to the city is none because they will pay the fee that's required for public mailing. So any questions?
Questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I will open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to comment on this?
We do. We have three people signed up to speak: David Dorian, Lori Sperry, and Tracy Benazinski. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Mr. Dorian, please approach the podium.
I'm David Dorian, resident of Kenmore. I think I forgot that last time. Mayor, council members, I think this is just a common sense proposal for a number of reasons. I think it's fair to say, I won't say nobody, but I'll say the vast majority of people are not making money off building affordable housing or helping people who are unhoused. I've talked to people that are on the board for Camp United We Stand, and they're scrambling most of the time just to help people, to get them the tents that they need, the gas canisters that they need, to find new places because they have to move around so frequently. So I think the city taking on the notification burden from that sense makes a lot of sense. From another perspective, we've heard a lot about desires for transparency and for communication with residents, and it would just be clearer if it's coming from the city. People see it, they're more likely to read it. So I just think this is a straightforward, common sense decision, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorian. Lori Sperry.
Again, I still live in Kenmore for now. So this, obviously, when I was reviewing the agenda, I reached out to a community member that lives near one of the proposed camps. And first of all, I totally support it. I agree that having the communication come from the city is going to likely be more consistent, more reliable. I think it's great. And the things that she had to add were, she agreed as well, and she had to add was to consider extending the range. It's only 1,000 feet right now. And, these types of, basically new people are coming into the neighborhood, and that's fine. That's not a problem. But I think people like to know that, not to be surprised. And the other suggestion she had, which I thought was a good one, is also using, the neighborhood groups and social media and things like that, because this part is, I'm adding, is not many, some people check their mail, some people don't. Okay, that's how it is. But anyway, I do support this. Thank you.
And Tracy Benazinski.
Tracy Benazinski, Kenmore. I am in favor of ordinance number 23-0580 to amend Kenmore Municipal Code to require the city of Kenmore to provide public notification in lieu of the sponsoring organization for indoor or outdoor temporary homeless shelters. In my estimation, the reasoning laid out in the proposed ordinance is sound. Thank you, staff, for that. I do think we could go one step further and pay for supplies and postage for the public notification mailer. A fee of several $100s could be significant to an organization, likely a nonprofit, sponsoring a temporary homeless shelter, but is comparatively small for an organization like a city with an operating budget of over $1 million. Eliminating this fee could be a huge help to those working to keep our neighbors sheltered. Thank you so much for your consideration and for this important work.
Thank you, Ms. Miniszynski. Mayor Herbig, I'd like to move on to virtual comment, if that's okay.
Yes.
If you'd like to speak during the public hearing on the subject at hand, please raise your hand now. Last call for virtual public comment on the public hearing. Mayor Herbig, I see no additional hands raised.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Anyone else wishing to be heard? Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? All right, with that, I'm declaring the public hearing closed. Moving on to the business agenda, proposed ordinance number 23-0580. Luke, anything further?
No, nothing to add.
Are there any questions or any questions for staff? Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to approve proposed ordinance number 23-0580.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Councilmember Baker, second from the Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Being none, would the clerk please take the roll? I'm sorry, Councilmember File.
Thank you. You know, there was the community comment about potentially paying for this postage and mailing. Given this is a homeless camp and notice is going out to folks, are there any legal limitations to us doing so? I don't know if our attorney is online with us now. Could answer this question.
Do we have our city attorney online?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, thank you, Don. Mr. Ton, I was saying that there was a community member who had mentioned the potential of us, the council and the city, covering the cost of postage and mailing for notice of homeless camp to our community. Is there any legal limitations to our council adopting such a position or the city taking such an action?
The city has the ability to provide resources for the poor and the infirm. So it depends on the category. I think your question was very broad, but it's my understanding that, and perhaps the director can correct me, I thought the payment of the fees, it's not from the residents of the encampment, but the property owner or the agency that's putting them up.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, Don.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Yes, on the motion to adopt ordinance number 23-050, amending Kenmore Municipal Code section 18-100-200 and requiring the city of Kenmore to provide public notification in lieu of the sponsoring organization for indoor or outdoor temporary homeless shelters. Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
The motion is passed.
Next on the business agenda, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility strategic 5-year plan presented by City Manager Rob Carlenzi, Assistant to the City Manager Garrett Oppenheim, and DEIA Consultant Channing Kelly Ray.
And Your Honor, if it's okay, we'd like a couple of members of the DEIA Advisory Committee to come join us at the presentation table.
Of course.
So members of the committee, if you could please come forward as well. See Juanita Aguilar and Juliana Pooley. And given that there's only 4 chairs up there, I'll stay here, but I'll participate in the conversation. And Your Honor, if it's okay, I'd like to turn the time over to Shannon Kelly Ray, our consultant.
You turn your mic on.
Thank you so much, City Manager Carl Lindsay. And thank you so much, council members, staff, and members of the Kenmore community. It has been, to say it has been a thrill and an honor would truly be an understatement of having the opportunity to get to know you all, collaborate with you and the staff, and most importantly, members of the Kenmore community, to move forward this idea, this topic that for a lot of communities, I can assure you, is seen as this controversial thing. I was excited to hear from the members of the public that are strongly advocating to improve accessibility, to improve opportunity, to improve the culture of belonging across Kenmore, to not choose winners and losers in the community, but to make sure that everybody wins, that everybody feels like they belong, and that everybody is truly a member of Kenmore's community. A lot of work, as you know, has gone into developing and passing a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility policy that has led to a 5-year strategic roadmap and DEIA plan. And I'm excited to, I always say it's sad to get toward the end of a project because I feel like I'm part of the team and part of the staff, and I hate to have to leave. But my months with the community is coming to an official close soon. But I'm excited to be able to pass the baton to the city manager's office, and specifically Garrett Oppenheimer, because he has been a sounding board, a collaborator, a partner, a thought partner, and someone that is rolled up his sleeves and jumped in with both feet to move this work forward. And so I'm going to have him introduce the policy and give you the update on where we are with the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly Ray. So we have a presentation here that we're just going to go through, and there will be opportunities for questions as we go. So this is about the strategic plan, the 5-year plan for 2023 through 2028. Just a little bit of the history so far. In September 2020, Resolution 20-348 was passed by the council to develop and implement a DEIA policy. In January of last year, the DEI task force was selected. That was 14 members from the community who have been working with the city staff to help us craft this. In November of last year, the council adopted the DEIA policy. And then this summer, we have been working with the staff and the advisory committee to get feedback. Which brings us to where we are now. Ms. Kelly Ray has provided the outline for the strategic plan, and she and the staff have provided content. Staff has drafted the 5-year roadmap spreadsheet, which shows not just all of the goals and objectives, but lead departments, timetables, and additional resources, whether they're required or not. We've obtained input from the staff and the DEIA advisory committee, and that has led us to the document that we're going to share tonight. So it's broken up into 7 different goals. I'm going to just read through each of these objectives with each goal, and then at the end of each slide, we're going to leave an opportunity for questions, comments, and things like that. So the first goal is leadership and operations. Objective 1.1 is to foster community engagement and inclusivity in decision-making. 1.2 is to ensure equitable access and representation in city services. 1.3, increase diversity in city vendors and committee and commission members. 1.4 is to support businesses and projects in alignment with equity goals. 1.5 is to strengthen leadership's commitment to DEIA. 1.6, ensure accountability through data collection and performance measures. And 1.7, strengthen organizational working knowledge and practice of DEIA. Turn it over to the council now for any questions or comments on goal 1.
Questions, comments?
Moving to goal number 2, which is plans, policies, and budgets. 2.1 is develop and implement inclusive and equitable policies. 2.2, engage the community in budget and policy decision-making. 2.3, develop and advocate for affordable housing and diverse housing options. 2.4, promote economic development opportunities that benefit all Kenmore residents and businesses. 2.5, adopt policies and practices that prioritize equity, accessibility, and inclusivity. And 2.6, enhance recreational and cultural opportunities to improve DEIA in Kenmore. Any questions or comments on that one? Goal 3 deals with the workplace, and that's the city as workplace. 3.1 is create and maintain an inclusive workplace culture. 3.2, develop and implement equitable hiring practices. 3.3, provide professional development and advancement opportunities. 3.4, offer competitive employee benefits and support systems. And 3.5, monitor and assess workplace diversity. Questions or comments on goal 3? Okay. Goal number 4 is about communication and education. It has 2 objectives. 4.1, improve accessibility and inclusivity of communications across all channels. And 4.2, enhance community engagement through targeted messaging and recognition of diverse cultures and histories. Questions or comments on goal 4? Okay, moving on to goal 5, which is about facility plans and improvements. 5.1, enhance the safety, accessibility, and inclusivity of parks and city-owned buildings. 5.2, improve transportation safety and accessibility for multiple modes of transportation so that owning an automobile is not the only way to get around. And 5.3, update facility plans to reflect community needs and promote equity. Questions or comments on goal 5? Goal number 6 is public safety and justice services. 6.1 is to advance the police department's progress in equitably serving and responding to the community. And 6.2 is to collaborate with the court, prosecutor, and public defender in promoting equity and lifting people from a downward cycle in the criminal justice system. Questions on goal 6? Finally, we have goal 7, which is housing and human services. 7.1 is advance human services by centering marginalized communities and responding to community needs. 7.2, collaborate with police and justice services, including the court, prosecutor, and public defender, in promoting equity and lifting people from the downward cycle in the criminal justice system. 7.3 is to promote affordable housing and support services. And 7.4 is to improve accessibility and inclusivity of city-sponsored events and services. Any questions?
Councilmember File.
Thank you. This is the only goal where I was hoping to see the addition of partners and stakeholders, nonprofit work, the collaborative work we do naturally as a municipality is working with nonprofit partners, organizations, stakeholders, and businesses. I was hoping to see a little something of that in this element or a little or sooner. Can you explain a little bit about that? Are we assuming it's there, or are we adding it in later? I want to make sure we're bringing our community along with us for this ride.
Really great question. And in Shannon's original suggested outline, there was a goal about partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is we felt that because of all the other chapters or the other goals and all the subsections of the other goals, we felt that it was being redundant to have partnerships mentioned in its own goal and then all throughout. So to reduce the redundancy, we took that chapter out and made sure that it was covered in all the rest of the chapters. So that's what we're proposing, is that partnerships be an integral part throughout all of the goals.
And so each of these goals and their subsections highlight high level, but there is a 7.11, 7.112, 7.13. So there are lots of different subsections that articulate very specific plans that connect city staff with the community through partnership.
Very good. I just wanted to make sure we're bringing our community with us. Thank you.
Your Honor. Councilmember Kugler is online, but her communication may be limited. So she and I connected on Friday and she had some suggested changes. Is it okay if I relay those to you now?
Of course.
Okay, section 1.23, there was just a typo. The word for, FOR, needed to be moved over a couple words. Instead of public city for projects, it should say for public projects. So we're gonna fix that. That was in the roadmap or the spreadsheet, not in the textual document. The textual document was fine. And then Councilmember Kugler is asking that we add a new subsection. And I can't remember where we want to put it, but she's asking that we add a subsection that reads, change city restroom signage to be more inclusive of gender identities. So we will find a good place for that, probably under the public facilities section. Is that chapter goal 5, I believe? Yeah. So if that's okay with, yes.
Councilmember Fowl.
Thank you. Just for some further clarity on that, the state already requires governments and federal government funded buildings to have gender neutral bathroom opportunity options or family bathrooms, for example. So this is putting that into practice and taking care of the lack of direct work on that piece, correct?
Okay.
Thank you.
May I continue? Also add a new subsection 2.4.7. Support and promote green jobs and companies, given those green jobs and companies' connection to environmental justice. So there is a connection between the environment and DEIA when it comes to environmental justice. And it's much along the lines that you all discussed at the retreat as well.
Councilmember Marshall.
Oh, and it's okay if city manager is finished yet or not with Councilmember Kugler's questions.
I'm continuing on with her.
Yeah,
okay.
Please
items.
do.
And
Councilmember Fowl.
Thank you. When that piggybacks with environmental social justice, it's also socioeconomic justice, right? So I just want to make sure we're considering that.
sure, would you
Thank
like
you.
us to add environmental and socio-economic justice?
Yes, thank you. Well, I guess social culturally responsive. How would you word that, Ms. Shannon Kennedy Ray?
I would say that it was environmental equity and economic and social justice.
Thank you. There you go.
All right, on 4.1.7, I just gotta read it here just to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, on 4.1.7, it is create video tutorials for online permit applications, provide Spanish subtitles, and Councilmember Kugler is recommending that we say provide Spanish subtitles and closed captioning. Okay. And then in 5.2.7, oh, she's proposing to add a new 5.2.7 under the goal, which is the objective, which is improved transportation safety and accessibility for multiple modes. So she's proposing a new 5.2.7, which is promote King County's community van, Metroflex, and other accessible transportation programs. Okay. And I believe that's all of Councilmember Kugler's comments. Councilmember Kugler, did I capture all those adequately?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, I'm grateful we touched on environmental protection in the analysis. And though it's not explicit, does the panel think that it's an essential part of the plan, that environmental protection is foremost the way we read this thing? Like, for instance, I would view it in terms of equity, for instance, protecting heritage trees that, for instance, recently the Snoqualmie tribe has publicly come out in favor of protecting in Seattle, not saying that it would have to happen here, but that sort of respect, do we view that as part of an implicit part of this plan and protecting the overall ecosystem?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Your Honor, can I?
Part of the social determinants of equity is both natural and built environment. So anything that would seek to promote, expand, and offer protections would be considered part of that.
And there is a section in here, I'd have to find it, but there is a section that talks about maintaining vegetation and things like that to reduce the heat that comes with lack of vegetation, which is definitely an equity issue.
Any other Councilmember Shribnick?
Are we on general comments about the plan? Okay.
I believe so.
Well, I just want to say this is a fantastic plan. I am so impressed and had the opportunity to speak briefly with another one of the DEI task force member, Carlos, who's of course been doing DEI work for literally decades. And I think, you know, he and I share an opinion that oftentimes, not in this case, oftentimes the work around DEI stalls after the concept phase and policy. And this is not that. This really brings it down to concrete actions. And I'm so excited about that. Just really I wanted to express that. So I just really applaud this effort and look forward to it going through. I had one small thought. There's a few places where the structure broke down for me just a little bit. So for example, in the 1.4 section, this is just an example, the sub objectives or pieces underneath that didn't necessarily fit the title that well. We got a couple of housing ones, and we've got housing in 3 different places, affordable housing in 3 different places. I mean, all of the sub items are great in all of these. It's just, maybe take one more pass through in terms of the titles matching what's underneath and eliminating maybe a little bit of redundancy in how things are organized. But I mean, it's great. Thank you.
Councilmember Pho?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the breadth of work this is and how deep it got. And I love that there is a definitionary key concept terms for folks, because these terms do change over time, and they can, definitely date us in probably another 10, 20 years, right? But I also want to call out and thank former council member Sherry, Laura Sperry, for her prior work on the policy of a safe and welcoming, affirming city. We know that DEI work started then, and she was one of those folks who voted for it, as did former Councilmember Milton Curtis and Brent Smith. And this continuation of deeper work and commitment to furthering our work is just part of the progress we go on to work on. And I also want to thank my fellow colleagues who my first year, mid-year, decided to amend our council goals to take DEI on as a lens in which we do our work and to take on the breadth of this work. So thank you to the task force and all you have done for our community. Thank you, Mrs. Shannon Keller-Ray, for your amazing services, Mr. Opperheim. Thank you.
Would any of the DIA task force members like to add anything?
Yes, it's been a really amazing experience as a community member. So I'm Juliana Pooley in Kenmore, and all of us on the task force, on this advisory committee, all of us live or work in Kenmore. And I think sometimes it's easy to assume that if you're involved in DEI work that you have like one specific identity or one specific agenda, or you're all in one specific like age or demographic. But our group has evolved and people come in and people come out, and we all have very varied, rich, robust experiences. And our conversations and our sharing has only become better and closer and more rich. And I know that there's been some concerns expressed of like, oh, what about the religious? Or what about, other people have said like, oh, what about the people who are aging? Or what about, this specific circumstance? And I just want to share, like, I think we've considered and loved and felt compassionate towards everybody. And I say that with a lot of compassion. We have so many voices, much more than just Juanita and I here today, and so many experiences and stories and family connections and our own education and experience and things that we're drawing upon. And we've talked about the tension of the different ages and generations and vulnerable people, and how can we build a community where everyone feels safe and loved and like they belong? And how do I do that without building a community of like pot of people where everyone has to be the same, but you get to still be you, but feel safe? And I really love what we came up with, because I think this is a really giant step for people to feel safe and loved, but still be who and where they are. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Deputy Mayor.
Also, really quick, one more thing. It has also been fantastic to learn, because it's not just us as a group like huddling our, heads together like an echo chamber, but we've had so many people from that the city manager has arranged, and people from the city and the community that have come in and really shown up and done research and presented. And so again, if someone has thought like, oh, what are they doing in there? Are they just talking like to each other and about each other? Like, no, this has been a learning exercise and continuing ed, and has stretched, and we've had homework and reading and deep dives, and goodness knows, like it's been some continuing ed and some soul stretching work, but I'm really proud of us. So thank you.
Hi, Juanita. My experience has been wonderful. I mean, it's been a dream come true. I first studied community psychology, and it's a lot about social justice and empathy. And when I graduated, there was just nothing available because nobody wanted to put energy into this. And coming to, I've lived in Kenmore for so long, and to see this in my own city and just be a part of it. And one of the things that has been so great is that we all recognize that we've been working, that we are not, we're not experts at all. And that allows us to take in information and advice and learn. This is an ongoing learning process. I am learning so much every day, and I'm not shutting. I always say I'm not finished yet. I learn, it's tomorrow I'll be better. Tomorrow I'll learn more. And we also learn about doing this. We don't make assumptions. That's one of the reasons why this work takes so long, is because we go out and get the data, we do the work. We don't make assumptions. We go and use data and evidence. And so we go and research, and it's very participatory as well, because we which I've heard, no research about us without us. And like Shannon says, do nothing for us without us. So this has been, and things will change, and we're gonna have different iterations as events happen, because humanity, we're not stagnant. It's a dynamic process living. And so we need to continually check in with us. And this is part of that work, that things that will happen and that will change. And we will need to make that commitment, that daily commitment to do the work, and have that in our mind, and have that in everything we do. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this. It's been such a great experience. So thank you all for this. And thank you, Shannon. and all the rest of the task force and everybody I've been working with. This has been a dream come true, let me tell you. So thank you.
Mayor? Oh, sorry. Deputy Mayor.
All of your comments are so heartwarming to me to hear. I want to thank you for the high quality work that you've done in providing us with an actionable plan for a strategic plan for us to make visible progress on this incredibly important work. And I think one of the most important things you brought up was that this is about creating an inclusive Kenmore for everybody. And it's not about taking away rights and privileges from others. It's about expanding access, equality, and freedom for all. And when we all feel safe and welcome in our community, we are all more free. And that is really the goal, for us to have a healthy, safe, free community for all of our residents to live in. This is big work. It's been going on my entire lifetime, and in the past 20 years, and then in the past 10 years, and now in the past 5, it's gotten more rich and deep and to places where we're implementing in new ways. And having the courage to come together, reach out to our community and put forth this big work, stepping into the unknown, is huge and takes courage. And I'm really thankful. I'm coming away from this presentation very inspired about the importance of working together and choosing. That's what we're doing as a community, choosing to create more access and freedom in our community. And I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Kugler, I saw your hand was up.
Thank you. I also just want to echo what Councilmember Shrubnik said. A lot of times I think this work does get to the policy stage and then sometimes really falters when it comes to the implementation phase. And I'm super excited and thankful for the work that's gone into this plan and the level of detail. And I just want to acknowledge like the importance of it coming from the top down. So from the council to our city manager, to our directors, and I'm really grateful for all of our residents who committed so much time and energy and volunteered their time to this work. I really appreciate that. And I feel like this is a really great labor of love that's come from a lot of their personal lived experiences, and that we've done a great job of incorporating community involvement in this. So thank you so much. And thank you, Chairman, for your leadership in this work as well.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. So it has been quite a bit of work creating this plan, but it's also going to be a lot of work implementing it. And Garrett and I are going to work together to hold ourselves and the organization accountable. Garrett's going to be our tracker, our bird dog tracker. He's going to create tracking sheets by department that I can work with directly, that Garrett and I can work directly with department heads on, and we'll be having regular check-ins. Where are you at on this? What do you need? Do you need additional resources for this? Also on the 5-year strategic plan roadmap, that spreadsheet that's also in your packet, it talks about who has the lead, when it's going to happen, whether additional resources are needed. So that's going to be the most helpful document of all in actually holding ourselves accountable and making things happen. We also plan, as the strategic plan mentions, we plan on providing you with an annual report to both to you and to the DEIA committee. So about this time next year, you should be getting an annual report to show what progress we've made. And I just want to thank the committee. They're just such a great group of people, and they've been really good giving us advice and thoughts, And it's a better document thanks to the committee. And then Shannon, we could not have done this without you. You've been amazing. Your expertise and your common sense advice just been just invaluable. So thank you so much. And Garrett, thanks for rolling up your sleeves and doing all the heavy lifting on this and putting it all together and sorting it all out. It's been amazing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for all their work on this. I know it's been a really long slog with a lot of work, and a lot of long hours and a lot of reading and a lot of soul searching and all of that. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time to actually do this important work, because this is work that is easy to minimalize or set aside, but it's important work, especially for governments, to ensure that the services that we're delivering and that the just the basic things that we're doing are accessible to everybody, and that we are serving everybody in an equitable manner. So I really appreciate all the work that all of you put into this, and look forward to that first report in a year. When are we approving this formally?
In September. Yeah, we'll make some of the changes that we all discussed tonight, and then we'll bring it forward at a September council meeting for final adoption.
All right, Councilmember File.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, I believe the last amendments were pretty clear. I would be comfortable moving this for adoption tonight as amended, as we proposed and approved the language.
Deputy Mayor.
I would second that. If there are no concerns.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Marshall.
Just wanted to make sure we got all of Councilmember Kugler's suggested additions, and also I think Councilmember Fowle had one maybe or something, just so that I guess that gets incorporated if we approve it.
I would personally rather see a final version with the amendments folded in, especially for the public's sake. I don't think passing something the first time that we have it in front of us is usually a great practice, personally. So I would like to see this come back to us personally. Any other comments? Councilor Fowle?
And just listening and responding to our community who has spoken to some of the issues we heard tonight, both about the policy and what does that mean to them, and for our community is also here who is appreciative of the policy, and those who had concerns. They were wondering, some were wondering where they see themselves as, Christian folks. And you can look to the policy and see culture and intersectionality, and know that that is principal pieces of exactly what that is. We have a very diverse community, both in faith and practices, and in people's origins and sexual orientation, and how they go about and live their lives and practices. So you have been heard tonight. There was additional question about the difference between the pride flag and a holiday celebration. There had been in prior city meetings the separation of how the government spends money on culture and events and community support, safety, health, well-being, versus supporting religious practices within government services. So there had been a recent meeting with the Heritage Society and the hopes for a nonprofit to pick up a holiday event, and that would have to come through that kind of a pathway should it come back. And I would support that for sure. But I just want to thank everybody. You were heard tonight. You are appreciated, and you are a part of this too. And it started with former council members who had been here prior. So this is just a continuation of that work. And we thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Mayor, I want to thank you for the reminder that it's important for our community to have an opportunity to read and take their time before we make an approval. I'm really thankful for the presentation today, but with this in mind and the importance of our community's voices and participation when we announce that we're going to move to adopt something, I'd like to move to table voting on this today to September as previously planned.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a table. This is not a debatable motion, and it is a majority vote. Would the clerk please take the roll to table approval to September?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Councilmember File,
I'm going to say no, as we have had multiple layers of this discussion, this topic, and foldouts come to us with many
Councilmember File,
opportunities.
this is not a debatable motion.
I agree. I'm just stating the statement for my vote. Thank
I
you.
understand.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
The motion has been tabled.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, since it's tabled to a specific time, you want to please,
The motion has been tabled to a September adoption date.
thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Yeah, I just want to clarify for the audience, I don't have any issues with what we've written or what has been offered as amendment. Just purely from a public process standpoint, I think it's important for something, especially as something that I think is going to be foundational to the city, for us to all have the final language in front of us before we vote, and for the public to have access to that before we vote. So I look forward to supporting this when we come back in September. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Next on the agenda is land acknowledgement to honor First Peoples presented by City Manager Rob Carlindsey and DEIA consultant Shannon Keller-Ray.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've been intending to do this for quite some time, but you as a city council directed us to really get moving on it. And so we did. And again, thanks to Shannon Kelly-Ray and her background and expertise, and also the relationships she's established with the tribes, she was able to take the lead on this. And I'd like to turn it over to Shannon to give a little more background and talk about the proposed land acknowledgement.
Thank you. It has been a long while coming. You've heard the saying, build nothing for them without them. That is a very strong and consistent element and belief system in all of this work and everything that we've done. Both myself and my staff, the advisory council who have been engaged and have come along the way as part of this work. A lot of research, a lot of communication, a lot of relationship building, doubling back to double check and triple check. City Manager Carlindsey will acknowledge that even, any small question that comes up, we go straight to the tribal community and ask, what do you think about this? Because our hope is that, there are these three important elements in doing a land acknowledgement. And that is to recognize that a harm was done, to recognize and acknowledge the folks who have been harmed, that experience harm, both past, present, and hopefully not future, but to also demonstrate a commitment that we continue to do no harm. And so those were those elements that we brought to this work, and the voices that we centered were those ones that have been aggrieved and that have been harmed. And so we work with them, many tribes, with the state of Washington, with many esteemed partners and collaborators to present to you the following as the land acknowledgement statement that we submit. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Sauk Seattle, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. We've looked at many iterations of that land acknowledgement statement, thinking of condensing it and combining it and having it fall under an umbrella. And what we've been told loud and clear from the tribe is that you must say their names. We want to make sure that this is not a performative act, but that one that comes with the deepest respect, humility, and commitment to change the course and trajectory that has been hundreds of years in the making. And so it's with that humility, respect, and spirit of equitable collaboration and a change for the future that we offer you this land acknowledgement. And alongside the land acknowledgement, we've also prepared for the website and for printed documents and communication, a longer form acknowledgement honoring of the many contributions, the cultural heritage, and the value add the tribal communities bring to the community at large, but specifically the city of Kenmore's community and its people. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
I just want to thank you for this exceptional land acknowledgement. I really love the backup statement that gives reference to the depth and work that we've done. I'm really thankful that we have this to move forward with. And as I read this, the phrasing, the content, the substance are there that we need. And I really like the way you said we pledge to stand alongside these communities and working toward a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. It's incredibly important, especially with the huge environmental stewardship work that we have before us, to be working in conjunction with the Native people of our land. So thank you.
Councilor Shrednick.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you. And I actually resonated on the same spot as Deputy Mayor O'Kane, that we pledge to stand alongside these communities. That there's something about that phrasing of that sentence that just really struck a chord in acknowledging past injustices and working toward a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. That's a beautiful sentence. The rest of it is great too. And I'm curious where we are with using this for meetings. Is that a separate topic or?
I think that's what we're discussing right now.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor File.
Thank you. I love this piece. It's not just a piece. It is culturally responsive. It is reflective of social justice and restorative justice. Very important to acknowledge our past, where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going. And acknowledge the people and their walk, their heritage, their memory, and their being. As we do, each of us much with privilege today. We are still yet of a different government. There are two forms of governments with our lay government and indigenous government. And we have to invite them to our space. That's how they come to our space. And I'm happy that we have a great team that reached out and came to this place. This is something I can be really proud of as a municipal leader, but it's on the back of your work, and I thank you for it.
Any other comments? Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this and the outreach that went into this also, because it is important that we get this right and not just do this as a performance. I am hoping that we will start printing this at the top of our agendas And we'll move forward when we come back from break, reading this as a part of our, the Deputy Mayor.
I think it's for adoption this evening.
Yeah, do we
Didn't I
actually-
read that correctly?
Do we need to formally adopt?
I'd like to
Yes.
I would like to move to adopt.
I second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Thank you. On the motion to adopt the proposed land acknowledgement to honor First Peoples, Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes,
The land acknowledgement has been adopted unanimously.
thank you very much. Next on the agenda, 2023 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan amendments for parks, transportation, and city facilities, presented by Finance Administration Director Melinda Merrill and Engineering Director John Vicente.
Good evening, Council. So we are presenting to you some revisions to the previous capital improvement program that you saw in the budget. And so we've made some changes, and I do want to point out that in this list of programs, we are not including the surface water management program. So this is just doing the parks, transportation, and the facilities. So no swim tonight. So all right, so in this program, we are looking at a $62 million capital improvement project list. And within that 62 million, you see we have 3 million for parks, which is 6 projects. We have 17 projects for transportation, going to keep John busy, and 1 project and a loan for the city facilities. And again, as I mentioned, there's an asterisk, swim CIP is not included. So the changes that have happened within parks is we had some revised estimates in the Twin Springs Park plan. And so we needed to add another $137,000 to that to finish that project. And we also have dollars that for the Tlawadiz landing that did not get spent last year, and we need to carry over. So that money is there, and we just need to use the dollars that are existing in the fund balance. And that's almost 2 million that's there. And then same thing with the 137 that will come from fund balance as well. So those are all covered within dollars that we already have, and those are just 2 changes that are happening in parks. Questions about the parks activities that are changing?
Questions?
Okay.
Not seeing any.
All right, the next one. Oh, sorry. So here's what makes up the total of the amount of the 3.8 million, 0.08 million in parks is Twin Springs, rhododendron, Tlawadiz, which is the big one, Log Boom to finish that, the Boathouse Pavilion for rhododendron, and then the Moorland Athletic Turf Replacement. That gets you to 3.08 million.
Councilor Marshall.
So question on Moorlands, is that going to be artificial turf for grass?
Artificial.
It's heavily dependent on 2 things. One is the extent to which the drainage would have to be revamped. And if that makes it cost prohibitive, then I'm going to recommend we don't do the project. The other one is to the extent to which the local leagues can raise money. If you'll see in the more detail there, there's close to $250,000 of that coming from the local leagues. So those 2 stars need to align. before it actually happens. And then you'll also notice that it's quite a ways out there in the CIP. Is it like 2026 or 7, something like that? Yeah.
All right, transportation revisions. So we have the existing projects that there were changes to. So there's a lot of projects. I forget the total number. Is it 18 or? It's a lot. So these are the ones that are listed that have changes to ones that exist, either increases or decreases. T27 is being reduced. T37 is being increased, and so on. T41, we're going to go into more detail into these. Yes, John, in the other pages?
On the new ones being
Just
added,
on the new
but
ones,
not on
okay.
these, no.
Okay, so I'll go into these a little bit more. So using REIT and connecting Washington funds added for the T37 project, for T41, we've updated for current budget estimates, and we're also using some REIT transportation impact fees for that project. T42, we have more money coming from carryover to complete that project. T44, that's being split into 2 phases. And so some of the money has been removed from phase 1 and added to phase 2. So you'll see that broken out into 2 projects now. T244, additional refunds have been added to complete that project. And then T252, funding was reduced to better reflect estimates. On that. So those are just some actually more minor changes that are happening to existing projects. The big adds are in the new projects that are added. And just for reference, from what you saw in the budget book, there's about a $10 million increase in the transportation projects. Do you want to go over this or you want me to?
I can go over it.
Okay.
So one of the new projects we have listed is T253, the 181st Street sidewalk. That's new sidewalks on the south side of 181st from 61st to 63rd. It's about 1.3 million, and the funding is majority coming from Sound Transit with some funds coming from our impact fees. The image there shows roughly kind of what we're going to be looking at, a little snapshot where we're going to have the sidewalk with street trees and parking along with 1 lane in each direction. And then the shoulder on the north side isn't going to be touched. Next slide. The next one we have is T255. That's the 68th Simons Rechannelization Project. We're adding $450,000 over 2023 and 2024. This is coming from our impact fees. What this project is going to do is restripe 68th Avenue from 170th to 181st. You'll see the image on the first 2 on the left. On the furthest one on the left, 68th southbound, we're going to retain what's currently striped just north of 181st Street. Just south, we're going to reduce the 2 lane to 1 lane and then merge it into 1, just kind of creating that little buffer there to provide easier, safe turning for vehicles making a right turn onto Bothaway and also coming through. That also is providing additional space we need for the channelization going northbound. So on the 181st, I'm sorry, on the northbound side between Bothaway and 181st, we're going to be converting the right turn through lane to a bus and right turn only lane, with the center lane being a through and then a left turn pocket. And then between 170th and Bothaway, we'll keep the 2 westbound 522 lanes when we're going to convert the inside right lane to a through northbound lane for 68. And then the right lane will be bus and right turn only lanes. The restriping of Northeast 170th is also going to be part of this even 2023, where we're going to be extending the bike lanes along the north side of 170th to roughly the Rhododendron Park driveway. And then we'll be adding a bike with buffer, or adding buffer lanes to the bike lane on the south side of the road. At this time, we're not going to be we're retaining the right turn pocket until we have further discussions with council as to how we want to address that particular intersection. Part of this funding also is going to be looking at doing some striping changes to all of Simons next year, looking to add more buffer, improving the buffer, putting some sort of vertical devices along there. But at this point, we're going to be doing some pilot experimentation to see what works best before we put an entire corridor on that. And then we're also going to be adding the green striping for the up to 163rd. So T260, again, 80th Avenue. This project is adding 2.6 million, 2.2 from our WashDOT Ped Bike grant, and the remaining will be impact fees. This project is going to be from 522 to Northeast 185th, where we'll have full bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the street, and adding 3 RFBs to strategic locations within that section. What I'm showing here is just a general look as to what it'll look like. 2 lanes each direction, bike with buffer, planted median or planted amenity strips, sidewalks each side, and then the RFB with the crossing. And those RFBs are going to be, 2 of them are going to be strategically located where the school buses are currently doing pickups and drop-offs, and then another one further south somewhere between SR 522 and 179th. We haven't yet figured out the best place for that location. This project also going to looking at doing a better connection with 80th and the trail. This is T261 Northeast 192nd Street project. This is adding $760,900 from WashDOT Safe Routes to School funds. And the remainder is being paid through the impact fees. This is 73rd Avenue to 75th sidewalk on the north side with, we're going to be striping in some bike lane along there and also extending them all the way to as far as we can where we have the space up to, I believe it's 75th place or 76th place. I can't remember exactly which street. And then we're going to be doing a small sidewalk connection on 75th where there's a little gap there, about 50 feet worth of sidewalk.
Joan, you'll be also coordinating with that culvert project there, is that correct?
If we are awarded funding from the legislature for the culvert 190th, we're going to combine that project with this project to save funding. They butt right up against each other at the same location, so we thought it would be cost effective to put the 2 together.
And so just a status update on that. We put in a community project request through Congresswoman Del Bene's office. She submitted it as one of her top projects forward for consideration. It's made it through a committee, been reduced down a little bit to just a little over $1 million. So if that holds, that'll be $1 million we can put towards a new culvert and hopefully coordinate and do at the same time as this project.
Yes, and we're going to hold off on the design just a little bit until we find out what's happening with that money. So we're looking at starting this design early next year. T262 Arrowhead project. This is at a 2.4 million, where 2 million is coming from Safe Routes to Schools and the additional money from our impact fees. This is along Arrowhead Drive at 151st, going around the bend to 64th Avenue. This is adding new sidewalk on the west side and south side of Arrowhead Drive. We'll be also throwing in some traffic calming along this corridor and an RFB at 64th Avenue. Again, another little snapshot of what we're looking to propose for this section, which is sidewalk on the one side of the street with a planting strip, 2 lanes each direction, traffic calming device somewhere strategically located at a few locations. And then, of course, the existing gravel shoulder will remain the same. We're looking to do a pilot program on these traffic calming devices either this year or next year and seeing kind of how it operates before we actually put something permanent on the ground. So that's our proposal with this one. And then finally, this is the 170th interim sidewalk project. We're estimating this to be about $200,000. And this is coming from fund carryover that was in use from 2022. The project is going to replace the the gravel, the soft path with concrete. It's going to be a minimum standard to allow for passage for ADA accessibility. And then we will be, and this will just be on the north side of the street from 72nd to where the concrete sidewalk starts near Rhododendron Park.
So this next slide just summarizes all of the projects that make up the 32.9 million in one location. So you can see them all listed here. I don't know if you have any questions on them. I'm not going to walk through them again, but here's part one of the list. And there's part two. And that makes up your 32.9 million, which, as I mentioned, is about 10 million more than what you had in the budget previously.
Questions?
Questions on transportation?
Can you address where the where the $645,000 from T27, where's that going? Which projects is that being moved to?
Those projects are being moved to the grant project. So Arrowhead, 192nd and 80th.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide is the city facility capital improvement program. Mhm.
Can we go back to the transportation projects? And I would just want to highlight the West B project. We've had this plan in here multiple times. I'm not sure everybody's caught it, but there is a difference here in what we're proposing on what actually happens on West B. John, do you want to elaborate a little more?
Yes, so given the history of this project, there used to be a large chunk of money that we wound up diverting to the West Sandwich River Bridge, which left us with $2 million. And as such, based off the budget reduction and also based off of our changing of philosophy on how we want to provide accessibility to our destinations within Kenmore, we've changed this project from more of a corridor project to more of a pedestrian bike access project. And we're looking at creating an accessible route from 61st down to the Burke Gilman Trail. So it would be something that's a decent width to allow for pedestrians to go up and down with the proper railings and landings so that they're not having to hike up the 20% slope to access one part of 61st or another. The hope is that we can get more funds. We're going to be applying for some grant money to make a even better, wider access. Right now, what we're proposing here is something that is good for pedestrians, but not as convenient for bicyclists because we can't make it very wide with the money that we have. But with the grant application I put out, I'm hoping to make it wider so that we can also have better two-way traffic.
And so this proposed plan does not include a second left turn lane eastbound going northbound at that intersection from Bothell Way onto 61st. This should not be news. This has been in prior CIPs, but I just want to highlight it.
And also the previous proposed plan, other changes we made is we're not going to be adding the buffer between the bus lane and the sidewalk. Utility undergrounding will not occur with this proposal. But one thing that we are going to look at is the operation of the intersection and 61st, 175th, and 61st, 181st.
Councilor Shrevenick.
Thank you for highlighting that. And it's possible I'm the only one that had missed that change some time ago. So I apologize. Can you, two things, confirm that this also means, I know at one point there was some dismay among Uplake residents of potentially closing off, what would that have been, northbound access from, I guess it's 60th into Uplake. So we're not closing that off. That's my first question. Is that true then as part of this project?
That's all going to be part of our analysis of the two intersections. The preliminary plan is to close it off and then make adjustments to the signal to allow for better flow off of 522. But again, we have to do our full analysis on the whole thing. to
So
see how it
that
works.
is still part of this project then?
It is still
Okay.
proposed as part of the project. to
Okay,
remove
so it
that.
isn't just the pedestrian crossing at 61st.
So no, the
Okay.
proposed project still includes removing the
Yeah, okay.
northbound access to 60th Avenue.
Okay.
It would,
Okay.
it would still be right in, right out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I understood you saying that it was, that this project has been changed to just a pedestrian access to the Brook Inland Trail on 61st, but it sounds like there's still
Predominantly,
quite a few. Okay, that makes more sense. And on that pedestrian access, I mean, right now there is pedestrian access. It was engineered, much to many people's dismay, to be super steep and curvy. So are we saying we're gonna have a separate now pedestrian pathway?
We essentially would
The-
have two.
We'd have two.
People would have a
Okay.
choice which one they want to take.
And where would this other one be? Is
So
that to be
right-
determined or?
So right now, the plan is to have it start at the north or the southwest corner of 61st and 522. And it would either be a switchback down to the trail or it would be a long ramp
Okay.
down to kind of where the King County Metro
Got it.
building is down there.
Okay,
Yeah, not
that's
too sure yet.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is not going to re-engineer the existing roadway. Interesting. Okay, because that is pretty hairy still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely no re-engineering of the roadway, but again, part of
Okay.
the analysis of the two intersections at 175th and 181st will also look at, do we want to keep, say, the downhill and make it a one-way road for safety for the Burke Inland Trail crossing? So we've had some issues with the downhill portion. And so we want to do a more, now that we've had time to do more of an analysis to see is what we have the best configuration, or is there something better that we can do?
Okay, so the city facility capital improvement, 26 million for the public workshop, land acquisition and development, and then the note for 20 years that will be repaid through swim fund and REIT. I don't plan on going into detail because there'll be a presentation right after this going into this. So I don't know if you have any questions for now or want to wait till Rob and Jennifer come up. So this sheet is the list that you got. Actually, this is our current list. So this is what is being presented tonight. This is a comprehensive list of all the expenditures, total of the 62 million that I mentioned earlier. Expenditures, and then this next sheet shows all the revenue sources that support that 62 million. If you have any questions, but this is just a summary of everything for your reference.
Councilmember Marshall.
Is there still the $1 million for 61st in phase one? Or did that, which part got moved to the phase two? I think like at least $1 million or maybe two, but is there still 1 million in phase one?
Yeah, there's still 1.5 million in phase one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Councilmember Shrevenick.
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification on the public workshop. I know we're going to talk about it in a minute, but it's labeled here. I believe the 16 million is, I thought maybe it was in the previous slide that it said it was for acquisition and development, but I believe the acquisition is already.
It did, but
It's corrected here, but I mean yeah. So I would take out the acquisition phrase since that's not part of the 16.
Any other comments or questions?
Okay, next slide shows you graphically where all the money is coming from. So you can see the majority is coming from debt, state grants, and REIT. And then additionally money from SWIM, some carryover, federal grants, other grants, and impact fees. So of course, these projects are addressing the city council priorities. Completion of walkways and waterways projects. There's 2 million going there. Continuing to implement the Parks Capital Improvement Plan 3.1, which is inclusive of the 2 million above. And then focusing on transportation safety, the 32.9 million on all the transportation projects. And of course, supporting economic development and advancing public access to water, walkable downtown, promoting the image of Kenmore. That is all for my part of the presentation. Any other comments or questions?
Questions, comments? Or it says here next step budget amendment in the fall. Do we
Yes.
have to formally adopt, or will we be formally adopting an updated CIP?
Yes.
And then a budget amendment?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Next item, hiring one full-time permanent position, senior civil engineer, to be primarily funded with the capital improvement plan at assisting and carrying out the 2023 to 2028 capital improvement plan, presented by engineering director John Vicente.
The presentation back up. So, good evening, Council. I'll be providing a presentation justification for why I need to bring on a new engineer to help implement our proposed CIP. To give you a rundown, we currently have one senior civil engineer and one capital projects manager. I've got a traffic engineer, a right-of-way inspector, administrative assistant, and of course myself. My project managers are my senior civil engineer and my capital projects manager. Right now, under our current 6-year work program, I've got 5 active projects. 3 are coming to completion this fourth quarter. 2 are expected the fourth quarter of 2025 and the first quarter of 2026. 3 projects have a long-term mitigation establishment. Those would be the West Sammamish River Bridge project, the 68th Ped Bike project, and the 192nd Culvert Replacement project. We have 6 projects that'll be starting the fourth quarter of 2023, and then 5 projects starting the first quarter of 2024. That averages about 13 active projects for 2024, 2027, with 8 in 2028. In general, 3 projects are a good match for a project manager to effectively manage those projects. They can also handle 1 or 2 closeout projects along with that. The above assumes that we're not adding any new projects in the next 6 years. We've got 3 to 6 new grant-funded transportation projects that could be possible. So if I apply for any more grants in the next 6 years and I get projects, that's not included in this list. And then if our environmental services department needs any assistance for adding culverts above and beyond the 192nd Street culvert, if they wind up needing some help from my department, then that will expand the need. But it doesn't take that into account with my current projections. So this is kind of a snapshot of the current proposal that we just heard from Linda, and this kind of shows all the projects proposed and roughly the time frame that they're slated to run their course. The red is indicating the active projects, and the brown indicates the closeout and mitigation process. Now, if we decide to apply for more grant projects, more sidewalk projects, I assume maybe we'll get 3 in the next 6 years. That's what it'll look like. So those would be added in 2026 and going through 2028. So it's a lot of red, it's a lot of lines. So we have 2 options, resource options. With the current proposed work plan is to maintain our current levels. That would be 7 to 8 projects per engineer, 2 projects in establishment phase, and 5 to 6 projects that would be active. That would be unsustainable for the team. They most likely would have to cut corners and wouldn't be able to provide the level of quality control that we need to have successful projects. Option 2 would be to add 1 engineer. That would give us 4 to 5 projects per engineer through 2027, 2 in 2028 if we don't get any new projects. That's 1 to 2 projects in establishment phase and 2 to 3 projects for that are active. It's very manageable. Like I said, 3 projects is a good number for project managers. So my goal would be if I got a new engineer, I'd have to apply for more work, which I don't mind doing. I like applying for work, or applying for grants, I should say. And again, if we decide to go with option 1, then we would have to be very selective on which grants we would be willing to accept. Given the amount of funding that's available out there, I'm pretty confident that I could secure more grant funds in the future. And I would like to have the opportunity to build all of the projects that I can get money for. So at this time, I'm recommending that council approve the hire of 1 full-time permanent engineer. The estimated start date would be September 5th for that person. That would allow me to begin the process to meet my grant requirements and get these projects going within the time frame that we promised within those applications. As under financial review, about 82% of that position will be funded through our transportation CIP, and 12% would come from the general fund at this point. And right now I'm proposing that we utilize the existing engineering fund and not make any changes to that current fund. I've got some savings in some areas and I will reduce expenditures in others to make that balance. And then when it comes time for our CIP update next time, we'll reevaluate how we want to, where we want to pay for our engineers. So stay tuned next year for that. Questions?
Councilmember Shebnick and then Councilmember Marshall.
This is great, and don't stop applying for grants for sure. We definitely want as many as we can get. And to that end, and maybe this isn't done in your kind of grants that you're applying for, but I mean, can we build in 1/3 FTE into, I mean, it's just 3 projects per manager. Can we build in 1/3 of an FTE into the applications?
So yes,
Okay.
and on these, I think 2 of the 3 grants, because they're larger, I did budget in 1/3 of an FTE for each one of those projects for each year.
Okay,
So I did.
but we're still hitting our general fund somehow.
Well, and the main reason for that is just our current policy and how we cover engineering costs. 100% could come from our CIP, but currently what we do is anything related to the CIP comes from the CIP, and other things like meetings and trainings and whatnot pulls from the general fund, which is budgeted in the engineering fund when we do our CIP. And so that's how we do it, but
Okay.
I'll let Rob.
I guess I
speak
would
more
just,
to-
if there's a way to do a fully loaded application, that would be ideal, just so that we're not hitting our general fund, but yeah.
That's where we'd like to go. We've had this practice where we initially charge all of the engineering positions to the general fund, and at the end of the year, the capital funds reimburse. We don't need to do it that way. I believe we can still pass audit muster just by charging those positions directly to the capital funds, not touching the general fund at all. Even if they go to an all staff meeting, they're still there because of the capital project. And my belief is we can still charge 100% of the position, even if they are attending training or going to citywide training or on vacation. They're in existence in our organization for the project, and therefore I think we can charge 100% to the projects, not to the general fund, and still pass audit. So that's a change that we'd like to probably make in the next biennium.
And I will say the 3 new projects that we put on there, those budgets include 1/3 of an FTE per year. So the money is there. It's just when it comes to the next grant cycle, I'm going to have to up them up so that we have more grant money coming in. One of the problems we run into is, the higher the grant ask, the more difficult sometimes it is to get an award. And some of these grants I was reaching the high end. And so I've have to try and find a way to make them more desirable to award. So, yeah.
Councilor Marshall?
What was the salary range again for the FTE, and can it be narrower?
So I don't recall the low end, but we budgeted for the high end, which includes benefits and everything. I believe it was 189,000 per year. And those salary ranges are established with our salary plan every couple of years. And so we, Rob would have to speak to, making changes to that. But my understanding is it's set, and then it takes a council action to change those salary ranges.
And John, you're proposing senior environmental, or senior project manager, right?
Senior civil engineer, yes.
Yeah, that salary range, not including benefits, is low end is 8540 per month. Top end is 10,846 per month.
Councilor File and then Councilmember Baker.
Thank you. My question's been answered.
Councilor Baker.
Yes. City manager, I understand that financially our lines are going to cross here pretty quick. And yet we're bringing in more grant money that we have to match and continuing to spend on projects where maybe we should slow down a little bit until we understand the finances a little bit better and have a clearer understanding of when the lines are going to cross. That's my concern. And I just don't think we can continue to go out and ask the people every year for more money. So I'm a little concerned by this.
Your Honor. Yeah. So this is more about the capital budget than it is the operating budget. So the operating budget, yes, you're correct. Our forecast does show the operating budget lines crossing in future years. With the exception of that 12% that John mentioned, this shouldn't touch the general fund, the operating budget. It should be capital only. Even the grant matching we're doing is not coming from the operating budget. It's not coming from the general fund. It's coming from things like impact fees and real estate excise tax, which are capital restricted revenues.
And those funds we are fine with. We're not going to run out of money. We're not going to be in trouble.
Well, the CIP that you have in front of you shows conservative projections on those revenues. And it still shows fund balances in those funds, like the real estate excise tax still has a fund balance, transportation impact fees have fund balances. So yeah, we're being conservative on those capital restricted revenue forecasts. And then back to whether it impacts the general fund. So this proposal shows that it couldn't, take up 12% of the position is paid for by the general fund. John's saying he can fit it within his existing budget without increasing his budget. And then in the next biennium, we would work to totally charge the position 100% to capital and not to the operating. Now, where this does touch the operating budget is in future years when the projects are all done. We got new sidewalks, we got new landscaping. Now we got to maintain them. And that's Jennifer's department. And so that is something, that's where it will hit the operating budget when the project's completed. Now there'll be a little bit, each project adds a little bit of maintenance, but it all adds up, which will be a perfect segue for our next conversation.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit concerned. Finances.
My question, John, is how did you land on a senior civil engineer versus, I assume there's junior civil engineer and probably just regular civil engineer? How did you land on the need for a senior engineer for this position?
But based off of our job descriptions, the senior civil engineer is a professional engineer. And one of the functions of this position is to actually start incorporating in-house design. And so I need someone who can do that without me having to spend hours and hours making sure that it's a well-engineered product. So that's why.
Fair enough. Councilmember File?
Thank you. I see the caseload is heavy enough that it would take somebody with great skill to be able to handle both the load and keep the projects on time. And I know, and I hope that we're planning some contingencies in there, right? But when we're talking about funding for these positions, and we're also thinking about our infrastructure growth, it's easier to cut or delay a project versus not having any plans in place and see that one grant that comes in that we would have qualified for. I know that it's better to be considered for projects with a full plate and maybe not get them all and then delay a couple projects, especially with the kind of infrastructure funding that's out there now. And given this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, we're seeing in our lifetime. I am both thrilled for Kenmore's future and excited, and I hope to see the outcome of all of these and the beautiful growth of our city. And it does take a considerable work. So I appreciate this, and this is something I can definitely support, and I'm ready to make a motion to adopt the one full-time permanent position, senior civil engineer, to be permanently funded by the capital improvement plan at assisting in carrying out the 2023-2028 capital improvement plan CIP as presented by our director, John Vicente, today.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
No.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. It is 9:02. With that in mind, unless there's any objection, I would like to recess the council for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We'll be back at 9:07. All right, the Kenmore City Council will return to order. Next on the agenda, Public Works Operations Center Project Phased Approach and Funding Strategy presented by City Manager Rob Carnt-Lindsay and Public Works Operation Director Jennifer Gordon.
Good evening, council. I think Rob is going to speak first and then I'll go after that.
All right, yeah, thank you. So, all right, this is a very important discussion tonight. We're talking about a long-term facility that's going to serve future generations for many years to come. And this is the Public Works Operations Center. And last year, we presented some numbers with full build out cost estimates, and it was a large number. And you as a city council gave us marching orders to go back to the drawing board and come up with less expensive alternatives. So we heard you loud and clear, and that's what we're here for tonight, is to come back to you with, sorry, I was running, I'm a little bit out of breath. But to come back with a more phased approach that does get the costs down, but still takes a long-term view of what's needed for future generations, and including the ability to grow the facility and do it in phases over time. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer. She'll get started, and then I'll be jumping in from time to time. And then when we get to the finances part, I'll jump in.
Thanks, Rob. We'll just do a quick background review. I know that you've heard this many times, but we're just going to go over it really quickly. As you know, from incorporation through 2018, we were contracting with the City of Lake Forest Park for public works operations maintenance services. And over time, you know, the agreement should have been updated on a regular basis, and it just kind of like maintained the same scope of work and level of service. But over that time, we gained new infrastructure, you know, new assets, and it just wasn't really working out very well for us. So that's when we decided to do the public works services analysis back in 2017. You know, and we really looked at the cost versus the value. We were not happy with the control we had of the day-to-day work that was happening, and to make the decision for Kenmore where it made sense to put those resources to serve our residents. And growth in both cities, you know, Lake Forest Park was growing at the same time Kenmore is growing, and we just, you know, changed over time. So in May of 2018 is when Lake Forest Park provided their notice that they would no longer be providing services to the city of Kenmore at the end of 2018. January 1st, we started our own in-house public works operations and services. And I think that it was easy to see right from the get-go that our level of service had improved greatly. And I just recall the first big winter storm we had of February of 2019 with the brand new crew. And I think that we were able to provide one of the best years of snow and ice control that we've ever been able to provide the city. So that was really exciting.
We called it Snowmageddon, and they've only been stood up as a new operation for a little over a month. And we had people telling us, wow, my street has never been plowed before. And I've lived here for 30 years. So.
We started that with one snowplow. We've been operating out of our temporary maintenance yard at the old Shell property, and then working out of the office space at the backside of the post office building. Meanwhile, searching for a permanent location. We've done a comprehensive search. We had actually multiple searches over the few years at the beginning. And we were looking at size, location, cost, and the last criteria brought in the willing seller. Our final selection is the property on 202nd neighboring Kenmore Middle School. and the purchase price was 6.1 million. We are currently working on the rezoning, or actually the rezoning process has already been completed as part of the comprehensive plan amendment, and we are working on the conditional use permit as well as the boundary line adjustment.
Yeah, just not to revisit this too much, but on the site selection, we tried multiple times on other previous sites. And what happened with the site we tried for on 175th is we got clear direction from you all that we needed to search for properties with willing sellers. And so that was an important criteria that rose to the top, and which weighed heavily when we were looking for this property.
So why do we need a Public Works Operations Center now? Well, the termination of the agreement with Lake Forest Park really was the turning point for us needing to think about long-term future of public works operations. The site we have now is just a temporary location. The size isn't adequate. We accumulate more infrastructure over the years, walkways and waterways, those new projects, all those capital improvement projects that we were just talking about. Taking over the maintenance is, it's a big effort. The increase of population, increase in customer service requests, new programs to operate and support, and as well as new state mandated requirements under the NPDES permit for surface water maintenance. What's in a public works operations building? We've got turnout space for maintenance workers. That's where we come in every day, and oftentimes we call it like the war room. We get together and plan our days out, coordinate with each other, produce our logs and reports. We are going to be having a water quality testing lab and equipment. We currently do that out of actually office space here upstairs. It will include lunchroom and a kitchen. Lunchroom will also be used for a large meeting space for all staff training, safety trainings, etc. Locker rooms, restrooms and showers, meeting spaces, small conference rooms, storage, which is a big one. And then also joining offices of the Public Works Operations will be environmental services, the Parks and Recreation, and all the admin support staff. What else happens on the site? We got to have a place to put our stuff. So we've got a lot of stuff. So we've got all of our maintenance vehicles. We've got trucks, small trucks, large trucks, and some vans. I think we've got a total of 14 vehicles currently, but we added 2 new that haven't been purchased yet for this biennium that will need to be added. Then we have all of our specialized vehicles and equipment like the street sweeper, the dump truck. We've got loader, snow plows and sanders, trailers, consist of like utility trailers, dump trailer, enclosed trailers, like our volunteer trailer that holds all of our volunteer tools, etc. for parks volunteer work days. Mow and trim equipment, mowers, line trimmers, blowers, small gas can fuel storage, tools and specialized hardware for a variety of maintenance, both indoor and outdoor, ladders, message boards, arrow boards, safety equipment. Also the need for space for large, small project like lay down space. So ordering extra, like when we're doing a surface water project, ordering like extra gravel, extra sticks of pipe, extra catch basins, etc. We get a large delivery annually for cartridges that go into certain surface water facility vaults that need to be taken taken out, cleaned and replaced. And they come on this big, huge, long flatbed, and it's really difficult right now to get that delivery to our current temporary site. Space for rental equipment delivery, storage, and that goes for both our own internal operations as well as events. And then we've got, of course, all of our like materials and supplies. And so I'm not going to go over every little single thing on here, but it all adds up. And we don't have enough space currently to keep the inventory of all of these things that we would normally like to have on hand.
And one thing I've always wanted is space for our own little temporary nursery, for little baby trees and other native plants. And we just haven't had the space for, this site would give us the space to have, small trees and other plants ready to be installed by volunteers for habitat restoration project and things like that. So
absolutely. So we're talking about all the things, temporary traffic control, all of our cones, barricades, signs, temporary detour signs, road closure, that kind of stuff. All of our snow and ice response materials, salt, sand, and liquid de-icer, streets maintenance, sand, gravel, concrete forms, roadway features, extra guardrail, fencing, handrails, surface water maintenance, supplies, gravel, compost, pipe, couplers, catch basins, grates, parks and landscape maintenance. Again, a lot of compost, sand, mulch, playground surfacing, fertilizer, paint and hardware, park amenity repair, extra surplus parts. So like for furniture, equipment, furniture, picnic shelters, barbecues, all that kind of stuff, restroom, cleaning supplies, irrigation supplies, facility maintenance supplies, storage for extra office, desks. We are in dire need of storage space. And I'll say that I think every operations person around will say that storage space is there's never enough storage space. And it's like the last thing on the plans. And it's always like, oh, we can make this storage space smaller. So we always need extra storage space.
we went and toured a few sites, and that was the number one thing. Oh, we wish we would have planned for more storage.
Yeah. We need a place for all of our garbage and recycling, our green waste storage, and all of our events storage from, anything from signage to volunteer stuff and all that kind of good stuff. The one thing I did want to note too is that talking about materials and supplies, the way we operate currently, we have to purchase the supplies and get rental equipment in for like individual jobs and do it one at a time. If we had the space to do it, we could buy things in bulk, get better discount, and we would have less truck trips because we could get a single delivery that would deliver the materials for multiple projects, not just like one little project here and there. So I think having that space will, it's an improvement in environmental operation, because we're not going to be running around us individual trips for all these catch basin here, a catch basin there type of thing. We can plan out projects for a period of time, whether that's 6 months, a year out, be prepared with all of those materials and order it at one time and just have one delivery. Where are we now? We are currently in the design and permitting phase. As Rob mentioned, we're seeking feedback tonight from you all on the direction of the updated budget and funding strategy. We'll be back in the fall, probably September, to get a formal approval on the project budget and the funding. Finalizing the design and obtain permits in the first half of 2024, go out to bid for construction the second half of 2024, and hopefully complete the project in the second half of 2025. Our proposal tonight is for doing the project as a phased approach, and to reduce the upfront costs and try to scale things back. And instead of building the whole site out now, build out parts of it as we can afford to build. So the first phase, we would propose that we would develop 2/3 of the site, construct just the operations building, so the operations office building. And that would include some environmental elements like cisterns, some solar, but solar ready for sure. EV charging with keeping in mind future addition of EV charging for, all of our vehicles and equipment, low impact development methods and materials. So what are we sacrificing in doing a phased approach? The shops building and vehicle storage bays, we will just have to use containers and awnings for now. We would just be relocating the containers that we have on the temporary site to be used at the permanent site. We won't be doing a full build out of the solar panels, dependent on what is required in the new building code. And we plan to go after grants for the build out of the solar panels. We will not likely have like a covered material storage. We'll just use our, eco block bins and tarps instead. We will not have the geothermal heating and cooling. We'll just use above ground energy efficient heat pumps. A smaller operations building, but room for expansion. And we won't be developing the decant facility that we use for filtering out street sweeping debris and Vactor waste. So here is the proposal for the first phase of the site development, which includes the operation, admin, crew building, as well as the parking lot development. And at the far end, the far north end of the site would be paved, and that would be an area where we would be kind of putting all of our container storage for, all of our operations. So all of the enclosed containers, like all the traffic control, signage, cones, all of that kind of stuff would be going in that location. And this is showing kind of what it would be, what it would look like in like the next phase of development, adding those enclosed shop spaces and covered storage. Phase 3 showing the decant facility on the west side of the property. And then the next is what the inside of the building would look like. Something very similar to this, not necessarily the final layout, but this would be what it would entail. One of the things I did want to point out is you want to make sure the electrical room is large enough for future expansion, because we would anticipate that all electrical for the entire site would come back to this one main electrical room. So all of the EV charging for the entire site, everything would be coming back. So we want to make sure we have a large enough capacity to add all of that EV in the future, and all of the solar panel, the inverters, et cetera, would be going in that electrical room.
One thing we mentioned earlier about something we're sacrificing is it's doing, the energy efficient above ground heat pumps instead of even more energy efficient geothermal heating that would send rods 400 feet into the ground and take advantage of the heat from the earth. Or in the case of the summertime, the coolness of the earth. We did get a estimate between the difference between above ground heat pumps and geothermal heating, and that cost difference is about $350,000. I think one or two of you might have been interested in that cost difference. So kind of hold that number in your head for a minute while until we get to the financing part of it.
And then just to bring back the conceptual site view of what we anticipate the site looking like. This shows essentially the full build out of the site.
And of course, the focus is on the right side where we're showing lots of trees and buffer.
Yes. Another view of the same thing, and the large buffer between the residential properties to the east. This kind of shows that the best on the very bottom shows the large buffer, 30-foot buffer will be raised up and vegetated to screen off our property from the residential side. And with that, we'll move into the funding.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
All right, we got a question from Councilmember Baker.
Jennifer, will any of the existing trees be able to be retained?
Yeah, our goal is to retain as many trees on the site as possible.
And
Okay, so looking at that fence line on both sides, will any of the trees along that fence line?
Yeah,
The long fence lines?
So the
Yeah,
kind
they're
of
in the
looking at
back
that.
and the front.
So there's really not a lot of vegetation on the east side between our property and the residential properties.
Okay.
So that would be all new vegetation. There's not really anything there. We would love to keep as many of the large trees as possible. We actually did just finish a arborist evaluation of the trees on the site, and there weren't, off the top of my head, I want to say there's about a dozen that need to come down because they're a hazard, but the goal would be to like save all of those big cedars that are in the middle of the property, and as many large trees as we possibly can.
Thank you.
And the architect's design was very thoughtful about working around existing trees.
Yep.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thanks. So we have a long time until decant facility build out. I just imagine there might be an efficiency with North Shore Utility District's decant facility. I know they have one. Can we at least ask them to see if there's an interlocal that can be entered into that we can try to save some money on the project with? I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Councilmember Final.
Thank you. I do appreciate the thorough layers of the design options and opportunities. And after really considering what this means in line with our climate action goals, along with what would be our contribution to delaying a full build out, would be us not being responsive enough, I believe, to our ozone output and carbon neutrality should we just move forward with a full build out. And I'm far more comfortable with the geothermic rods. Just one more thought. While there's a great plan to retain many trees and also plant many more with the site, as well as looking at this site for its opportunity of infrastructure improvements, microgrid improvements, really preparing us for that, 100-year vision view, like municipalities are really supposed to be doing. I just want to check in on where we're at with our significant tree ordinance. I'd like to be able to keep some of those grand trees on the site if we can, if they're healthy, versus losing any more grand trees in Kenmore.
Yeah, so we will comply with the existing tree ordinance, including the tier 1 regulations that you passed a while back. But the tier 2 regulations are on hold, depending on what happens in other cities. So, but our goal is to even exceed existing regulations if we possibly can, and I'm sure we will. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, I just want to wrap this up. I'm more comfortable looking at where our actual goals are for carbon neutrality and walking that walk. I know we're trying to be careful, and the funding, grants and infrastructure funding is there now. It may not be there in a couple of years. I don't know that Kenmore could afford that difference in the outcome. And a decant station value to our goals on carbon neutrality is really important. So I am more supportive of just moving forward on a full build out.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Hey, thank you for this. And thank you for the value engineering work that you have done. I think you've, really tried to be responsive to the concerns. I'm just going to put on the fiscally cautious hat. I always do. There's a couple of things. One is it's still a really big ticket, even in phases. And so one piece of that, 16 million for the building for 10,000 square feet. And maybe I'm missing something, but that's a big ticket per square foot for any building. So I guess that was my first question.
Okay. I think I would say that there is a significant amount of site work that needs to be done, and that is a huge part of the cost.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
So,
think
okay.
it's like 4.5 million, 5 million for just site work that needs to be done. So
It still seems like, just looking at square footage costs for construction, it still seems very, very high. I mean, higher than even, complex medical buildings. I'm just curious about that.
think
And then I have
that
another question.
The large amount is the site work, and the footprint itself would be much larger than typical because we're adding all of this,
Yeah.
Impervious surface for all of the equipment, materials, et cetera. So
Okay.
while like a regular office building, if this was like a regular office building that nobody's doing work on the site, we wouldn't have all those, that extracurricular stuff
Right.
around the building. And that's really a high cost because we're starting from scratch. There's no infrastructure there. There's no, surface water facility,
Right.
all of that
Okay.
kind of stuff, just
Yeah. Okay.
underground stuff you
And-
don't think about.
And then my other question is, I know the funding is capital specific for the most part, but could those our number one thing that folks talk about is pedestrian facilities, and of course we were just talking about that. And could any of these funds that we're using for the public works facility, could they, what's our opportunity cost? Would we be able to do more sidewalk? And it's a tough call. We need both. We absolutely, don't get me wrong, we absolutely need a public works facility. I'm not questioning the fundamentals here. It's the amount. Yeah.
Your Honor, would it be okay for us to go to the next slide and talk about the funding? Yeah, definitely opportunity cost for sure. I would say that the city's been building new infrastructure for the last 25 years. It's now time to shift into maintenance mode. Doesn't mean we still can't build additional infrastructure. And as you saw from John's presentation, we're going to be just as busy as we ever have been building new sidewalks and we're saying we can do that and this, we can do both. But you're right, having 900,000 a year diverted from REIT means that we can't use it for other things. That is correct. Parks, sidewalks, things like that. But again, I would argue that it's now time to really be in maintenance mode because we have built a lot of infrastructure that needs to be maintained properly and we need to do a good job at it. So that's my recommendation. But if I could just quickly go through these finances, you can see the cost, the site acquisition, the design, the construction contingency. We're looking at 22.5 million total. And one thing I did direct the architect and the cost estimators to do is to be conservative on the costs because I am so done with coming in too low on these costs and then scrambling. And the architect heard that loud and clear. And so I think he's built a lot of contingency and conservatism into the costs. Yeah.
I think one thing that I wanted to add was that the really good thing about the cost estimate is that these are coming from like real costs out there because there's some other buildings being built for a public works facility like this, and they were able to get really good cost estimates, realistic cost estimates that are actually happening right now. So
yeah, I'm still in touch with my friends in Gig Harbor, and they just opened bids a couple of months ago on a new public works operations facility. I feel bad that it took them so long to build that thing, but I wished I would have built it when I was there. But anyway, now let's talk about your current adopted budget is 20 million. So we are recommending a $2.5 million increase in that. Another thing we're proposing, if the bids come in low, below budget, we would love to add a shops building there as an additive alternate, but we're not committing to do that. It would just be an additive alternate in the bid package because we really would love to get our equipment and vehicles, at least some of them undercover in a much better way through this plan. So if we can go to the funding piece of it. So our proposed funding strategy is to do a 20-year bond. You've already done a bond for the property acquisition, but combined the property acquisition bond combined with the construction bond, the estimated payment would be about 1.8 million. And we've checked with our bond underwriter on that, and that's a solid number in today's interest rates. But the proposed revenue sources to pay back the bond would be to divert 900,000 per year of real estate excise tax and 900,000 in surface water utility fee revenue. We've always maintained the assumption and the policy that surface water is going to pay for half of everything. They pay for half of the maintenance workers, with the exception of a couple that are dedicated exclusively to parks, but it's been a 50-50 split since we took this in-house. So on the real estate excise tax, we collect just a little over 2 million a year in annual revenue. In 2021, it was about 2.7 million, and in 2022 it was 2.2 million. The real estate projections you saw earlier show us bringing in about 2 million a year, so the CIP is even a little more conservative. But I just want to emphasize that this is not coming out of the general fund or the operating budget. By state law, real estate excise tax cannot be spent on operations. So it can only be spent on one-time capital. There's a small exception to that I don't need to get into, but this is a capital restricted revenue fund that doesn't touch the general fund. So if you're assuming 2.2 million a year in revenue, that leaves 1.3 million available for other capital projects. And you saw in the CIP discussion earlier that we are dedicating REIT to our CIPs, our other CIPs, the remaining REIT. On the surface water utility side, We are doing a rate study. We want to bring you a report probably in September on where we're at on that. But we were able to calculate that we would have to raise surface water fees, and a $900,000 share of the debt service would result in a $75 per year household increase, or $6.25 per month. What we're probably going to do is stagger that increase so it wouldn't all happen in one year. We'd have about half of that increase happen next year and the other half of the increase happen in the following year. So the current household fee for surface water is $249. So just add 75 on to that to you can see what the new rate would be. I just want to remind everybody that as with property tax, there's also an exemption from surface water utility fees for low-income seniors and disabled residents. So, next slide.
Any questions on?
Yeah, let's have a discussion on this before we go to the conclusion slide.
Deputy Mayor.
It is a big expense, but I do recognize the importance and I understand the vision here. I do have a few questions. I think I'm just gonna put them, I'm not going to give 4 questions at once. I'm just gonna share the thoughts that came to mind. I remember hearing our reduced cost and choking, what? But as I gave bigger consideration to the maintenance that we need to do, the environmental work that we need to do, the fact that we need the space and the care and consideration in the site design, I especially appreciate the low profile of the buildings, in addition to the tree planting and preservation that's in place. There's a thought of mine that is, what would this have cost 10 years ago? And I think as a council, we have to give consideration to what it would have cost if we had done it 10 years ago, and it would have blown our heads off then. And it's blowing our heads off now. I'm just going to say it. Each and every one of us recognize the expense of this. I do think about what would that have been? And then we wonder about what would inflation take it to in the future.
Do you mind if I add to
Yeah.
that just really quick? So just to illustrate that, back when I first started here, the fire district had their old building for sale. And of course, we were contracting with Lake Forest Park at the time, and we didn't have a strong need. But back then they wanted a whopping $2.5 million for that site, which would have been turnkey. Almost, but back then we were like, oh, that's so much. That's a lot of money. We can't afford that. Fast forward 10 years, so here we are in the same situation. Yes, this is expensive. Yes, it's a lot of money. But fast forward 10 years from now, if we don't do anything, it's going to be deja vu all over again.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear, or I was curious about. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. I am glad to hear this is a conservative estimate. So I'm praying for our community and city that we'll have the ability to do the proposed additive build out alternative of the shops building. I genuinely hope that we're able to do that all within this, especially looking at the plans. I have a couple questions about geothermal. I think I can put these all together at once and not break it out too much. But first with geothermal would be, does this have to be done up front? Is this something we can do later? And so when does geothermal have to be done to build? What is the cost difference? Now, I see that's $350,000 to do geothermal, but what is that a difference compared to going straight into heat pump? Or is it, I'm just kind of curious what the differential between the investment in straight heat pump heating, cooling versus geothermal, because I'm going to assume the heat pump is several, is as expensive as well. So I just want to know what that cost difference may be, and maybe it is 350,000 on top. Okay, I see you nodding.
So 350 is the cost difference. Yeah.
On top of what it would already cost. Okay.
And obviously the best time to do geothermal is when you're under construction, because you got to do all that digging and drilling and everything. Yeah, I would imagine it would be a lot more expensive if you were to come back later and try to do it.
I think so, but I think you would also have to, you'd have to build if you didn't build the infrastructure, to use that and going into the building type of thing, you'd want to be, that would make it actually cost more after the fact.
Yeah.
One thing we can get between now and the next time we discuss this is the energy savings between geothermal and heat pumps. So we can get that number over the next month or so.
I think that'd be very important for our council and community to hear. I think it's a good direction to go. I think but with those numbers, I think that will give us additional reason to proceed in that direction. One more thing. So I just want to say, I'd like a little bit more information, but I am thinking that I think it's important for us to have a better understanding of what that investment would be. And I would hope we can find a way to get that done up front. Took all sorts of notes, but I had one more thing. Oh, I just recall, now I remember the, given the, I just want to echo, I just want to, Councilmember File brought up a good point of, with the long-term cost and investment, why not do it all right now? I understand where she's coming from, but I also appreciate the phased approach for our community, because this is a big chunk. And I know that getting this big part done up front will at least get the ball rolling for your team and our environmental services team and admins. I see why we need this. I may have missed this, and I wish I had looked a little bit more closely. When would you be coming back for those other phases for us to find ways of funding them?
That would be for future city councils to decide as funding is available. We don't have a planned out answer for that question.
And then I have another question with the geothermal. Would there possibly be grants or things that we might be able to tap into to find a way to get that done? I would think that'd be great if we could.
Yes, and you, Councilmember File, and others have been saying go after grants, and we are. This is the worst case scenario where we're funding it all ourselves, but we are, we have our federal lobbyist hunting and searching for us, and we're looking to, and so yeah, we're on that for sure.
Okay, that's good to hear. I know how creative and inspired your team is to get this done as both cost effectively and efficiently as possible. I really appreciate the conservation of trees, the design plan. It's going to be a wonderful building, and with our long-term environmental work, which I had a thought. I don't know if I want to say it out loud, but I thought, are there other funding sources that we might be able to do? I think I'm going to hold my concept, because I have an idea, but what I can see is we have parks and resources that are going to need to be tended to, expanded environmental work. There's going to be a need for this resource for us to have places for people who do the work to do the work. And I especially like your plan for storage for materials and landscaping. So there's a lot of the care that's gone into the design here is I want to say cutting edge, leading edge, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Marshall.
I guess it's expected the surface water utility fee increase would be by council ordinance rather than putting it to the people.
Correct. Any other questions? Still have slides, right? Okay.
So we're gonna, unless we hear otherwise, we're gonna keep marching. Oh, I think the deputy mayor has a question.
Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Marshall tapped into what was on my mind. Not that we're doing this at this time, but say if in the future we were to put forward something like a municipal parks district or something along those lines, could that move towards funding this sort of work? If it were an initiative about measure to the people?
Yes, you could, like, let's say the city created a metropolitan park district. Yes, you could charge the parks portion of the facility costs to the district. Yep.
Thank you. That was just my creative thinking at home the other day. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so unless we hear otherwise, we're going to continue on the track we're proposing. Just a quick summary bullets there, going in-house. I'm so glad we did. It was long overdue, and looking back now, I realize it was inevitable. Other cities our size have public works operation centers. I just couldn't be more pleased with the dramatic jump in quality and level of service. I've seen it firsthand. It's no longer an argument or a negotiation every time we want to use our own sweeper. So it's been great. The huge dent that they put in surface water facilities alone has been breathtaking. Like, they have replaced huge sections of pipe and catch basins, work that just wasn't getting done before. It's incredible. So you can see these other bullets here, but we do really feel there's a strong need for this property and for the construction of this facility. And I do believe it's going to serve people for many years to come, long after we're all gone. So any other questions or?
Actually, one more slide, Rob.
Oh, there is. Oh, okay. Yeah, you've heard this more of the same here. We are taking that prudent approach to build what we can afford in phases. We're making sacrifices, including climate-friendly components, and we're taking that long view. So.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Staff reports.
Just one item, Your Honor and Council. So we're looking at a possible date for a general town hall meeting, and we're zeroing in on Thursday, September 27th at about 6 o'clock. Thinking 6 to 8, something like that. And just for context, remember,
28th, Rob. The 27th is a Wednesday.
I mean the 28th. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, September 28th. So there's the Monday, the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, correct? Yeah. So Thursday, the 28th. And just for context, we have a date set on September 12th to do the climate action plan and environmental stewardship workshop with the community. So we don't want that town hall meeting to be too close in chronological proximity to the CAP workshop. So this way they're a good 2.5 weeks apart, and we're not overloading the public with things to come to. So that's what we're proposing, is Thursday, the 28th of September, that evening. And I think it's important that all 7 of you can make it, because we need 7, we're going to have at least 7 topics. So we need 7 council members to cover each topic. Looking at your calendars, does that look good to you?
What date?
September 28th, probably 6 p.m. And we're going to make it fun. This is going to be some fun stuff. And it'll be two-way as you want, and opportunity for people to have good conversation and choose their topics and give you feedback. All right, I'll take that as a yes. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember reports and comments. Councilmember Baker.
Yes, National League of Cities held its annual board and committee meetings in Tacoma because Victoria Woodards, the mayor of Tacoma, is president of NLC. It was, it's not like the typical NLC meeting because it's more leadership oriented. And I found the meeting very beneficial. And all in all, it was good to have NLC on this coast for a change.
Councilor Marshall.
I want to thank you, my colleagues, and the staff for a solid summer session. I think we're coming to a close on it. And thank you. And thank you all. And also, most of all, thanks to the public for their participation.
Councilmember Kugler, if you're still on, anything to report?
Yeah, nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, thanks to our community for stepping up the last few meetings and letting us know your priorities. So last week, there was a joint meeting. I was representing Kenmore at a joint meeting of the NPRSA North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area, which funds the senior center. A joint meeting between NPRSA and the North Shore Senior Center Board itself. Starting to look at planning for the renewal, which is still a couple of years out. But I think at this point, we're going to start meeting jointly, probably quarterly, to make sure that the agendas for both organizations are well aligned and that we make sure that we have adequate input from the community to really understand the needs before we go out to the voters.
Councilmember File.
Thank you, but not tonight.
Deputy Mayor.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
And I have nothing to report other than I will be representing the city at the Sound Transit meeting coming up on Thursday about the 522 bus rapid transit project. So with nothing more to come before us, Kenmore City Council is adjourned.